This is the third class in the Cloud Computing Basics curriculum. Here we're going to talk about cloud computing challenges and inhibitors. During this class, we will go in depth on some of the most recognized challenges and concerns when enterprises decide to transition to cloud computing. So one of the biggest concerns when using cloud service providers is that the enterprise no longer has control of when the infrastructure changes. The cloud service provider actually is responsible for designing, managing, and running the IT infrastructure. This is really one of the benefits that are often highlighted with managing or transition to cloud computing. The other side of that coin is that the cloud service provider actually automatically updates its infrastructure and enforces change. For example, if an update is available, it happens seamlessly when you're leveraging cloud, or so it may seem. But if you don't want the update, you really recognize it. If, for instance, you're coming in one day and you have a major proposal that you need to do, and in doing this proposal, you rely upon some key features of an application that's being provided by the cloud service provider. You walk in without a care in the world, and that feature has been changed or updated. Now you no longer know exactly what's going on. Other possibilities is that a new feature may violate an enterprise security policy, and now you have no way of correcting or stopping the use of the application. Managing your own systems and your own applications may take more time and may take a little more money, but you get to decide when things change, when an update occurs, or if an update actually needs to happen. A second concern with cloud is that as you use more and more cloud computing services, the costs escalate and the benefits may disappear as your demand grows. Small deployments, it's really a no-brainer to go to cloud computing. But for larger firms, it can actually cost more than having their own IT infrastructure. One of the most famous examples of this is Zynga. While when they started off, they immediately leveraged the expandability and elasticity of cloud services. But as they grew faster, it became cheaper for the company to leave the cloud and move all of their information technology in-house. Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have all recognized this issue. And in fact, Microsoft and Amazon have introduced discounts for users of their service as they grow, so that the cloud can maintain a cost advantage. So how many of you have been out at a coffee shop maybe, trying to get access to some data through your smartphone? Well, a lack of internet access really leaves your data out of reach. Although we get comfortable with fairly ubiquitous access and connectivity, there are times when there is no connection to the internet. Using the cloud, this could really be a nightmare. If your network goes offline, you could be left unable to log in to key services or to get access to important files. Cloud service providers really put out that access is everywhere, but sometimes you will lose it. While Wi-Fi services usually don't suffer from this lack of connectivity, you can incur large costs at some hotels or unreliability of the network. So this also basically gives lack of access. There's also a possibility that the cloud vendor may go offline. There's really nothing you can do about a cloud vendor outage. There have been many documents written about major outages across all of the cloud service providers, including Google, Microsoft, and Amazon Web Services. These shortages typically last only a short time, and it is true that cloud service providers get better than 99% availability, but if it happens to you, it can really ruin your day. Even if the data or access comes back a couple of hours later, it just may be too late. One of the major issues that enterprises have when working with cloud service providers is that the cloud service provider has all of the power when it comes to negotiating on contracts. In cloud computing, the CSP, or cloud service provider, takes all the risk of building, funding, and managing the IT infrastructure. While this is often cited as a benefit, it also drives the power of the cloud service provider in negotiating the service level agreements or the service level availability for their delivery. Unless you are a very large organization that has a lot of buying power in the marketplace, there is little incentive for the cloud service provider to change anything on their contracts. Now, if the cloud service provider does allow a change, it will cost you more money. So if you need a higher service level agreement and your cloud service provider doesn't offer that, it may be better for you to just build your own IT infrastructure. In today's world of increased cyber terrorism, many governments are really taking a second look at the rules, regulations, and laws around cloud computing. In the United States, the Patriot Act is really pointed to as a key concern when using cloud computing, because a government, if they have the right approval or the right warrant, can really get access to any information or data that may be held by a cloud service provider. Some companies, like Microsoft, have moved to change jurisdiction of their information and data. They had hoped that this would allow others to be more comfortable with data, especially if it's subject to other countries' laws and regulations. This was important, or it still is important, in Europe, where many of the countries restrict the data for their citizens to stay. They require that data to remain within the physical boundaries of the country. Many people have taken the government to court over these regulations and the ability for the government to get access to their personal data. But so far, the government has prevailed in most of these issues and litigations. And in fact, vendors have been compelled to provide information and data to the government, no matter where the data resides. Companies like Microsoft are challenging these rulings, but no one knows in the end where this will go. One of the big benefits that's often touted by cloud computing is that the cloud service provider will manage all of your IT. That way you avoid the expense of hardware, and the cloud service provider takes on the responsibility. Well, if somebody else is doing it for you, you now are relying upon that other organization for your important processes. That may not work for your organization. You could also lose the skill sets necessary to efficiently and effectively run an IT infrastructure. Also, if something goes wrong, you don't have anyone in-house that can actually fix it. It's well documented that having your own IT team builds more loyalty and can provide better service than relying on third parties. So the cost savings may not be important if you can't meet your own business or operational requirements. And this reliance on a third party leaves you tied to a cloud. Many firms have embraced the philosophy of leveraging cloud and offloading their own hardware, software, and staff. But once you've gone down that route, it's very hard and very costly to return to leveraging and running your own IT infrastructure. So if you go to the cloud, and if your associated drawbacks really prevent you from completing or meeting your business goals, you could end up in a situation where you can't leave the cloud service provider. You get what's known as vendor lock-in. Leveraging cloud computing also may put your critical data at risk. Cloud security has always been the #1 concern of any organization that's transitioning to a community, public cloud. There are no shortages of incidents where data has been compromised in the cloud. It's not just hackers that pose risk, however. Acts like sharing documents using cloud services like Dropbox and Box could also put your critical business data at risk. This is another aspect of shadow IT, where your staff or employees may be using cloud computing and you don't even know it. If your information is so vital that making it visible through a simple act of sharing a link could compromise your business, then cloud may not be right for you. There are other inhibitors to adopting cloud computing. One of them is not having the appropriate cloud governance framework within your organization. If you're going to use and leverage cloud computing, you need to have these governance processes already in place. If you're using cloud and you are an organization of any size, you will probably use multiple cloud service providers. That leads to a requirement of federating your data and application. If you don't have such a federation process in place, cloud may not be right for you. Once again, if you're using multiple clouds and you have a transaction-based process, you need to ensure concurrency across your multiple cloud service providers. Cloud computing is a young industry, and many of the standards required to ensure concurrency just don't exist. Things like common infrastructure file format aren't currently available across the cloud computing industry. Industry-specific standards and protocols may also prevent you from effectively leveraging the cloud. The data ownership has always been a big focus when leveraging cloud computing. It's very important for the consumer to understand the service level agreement and the responsibilities of the cloud service provider and of the cloud service consumer when selecting a cloud service provider. It's not that you really lose control, but you have to maintain knowledge of what your responsibilities are vis-a-vis the cloud service provider. And security. Security is always the #1 issue when anyone is talking about cloud computing. Once again, you need to understand the service level agreement with the cloud service provider to understand the responsibilities of the cloud service provider and of you as a cloud service consumer. This also goes with privacy. Compliance changes based upon your industry and your business process. The regulatory requirements in the finance industry are completely different than those in the healthcare. It's important for you to understand if and how your cloud service provider is really addressing your industry-specific compliance requirements. As I said before, if you go kit and caboodle into the cloud and you have no way of extracting yourself from a cloud service provider, you will get locked into that vendor, no matter how much it costs you. Bandwidth, latency, network performance, all of these could prevent you from completing critical activities if you need to do it through the cloud. And the migration of data, applications, and the synchronization of your information across multiple cloud service providers and your enterprise could also inhibit your effective and efficient adoption of cloud computing. So thank you for taking the time to go through this class of cloud computing concerns and inhibitors. Our next class is really going to answer the age-old question of what exactly is cloud computing. I look forward to seeing you there.